So recently, one of the clients that I work with invited me to their enterprise LLM tool and asked me to just any of the work that I'm doing for them with them to use it, to put it in that tool as opposed to my personal tools that I use. And as I went along with it and I understand why they, had that ask of me, it just makes more sense that it could have, crossover view into the whole organization. But then it set me thinking and it made me question a little bit because it's the kind of the first time I've been asked to use somebody else's LLM as opposed to my own off the shelf that I've been managing for the last few years. And I started to wonder what happens to my ideas?
Mm,
What happens to the way that I'm thinking about commercialization for their product and go to market strategy when they're seeing the way that I'm talking to the LLM and asking it to work with me to create the plan, to create the pitfalls, to create the strategic alliances. Uh, and it
Yeah.
really gave me pause.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And Melek, it reminds me of the conversation we had, and I shared my anxieties by asking I'm at a business school, and I do ask students to build out things or to upload their IP into these models. So the idea of labor and pay, and am I perpetuating some kind of injustice by doing that? Actually, it's something that lingers in the back of my head, and it's just, yeah, it's been in our world as me and Melek have been engaging these past few weeks. It is a question that we struggle with. So
And then through good fortune, we came across Matt's article for the Wall
yeah.
Street Journal. And that's Matt is our special guest today.
AI isn't just for tech pros, it's for you too. Welcome to Yella Now AI. I'm Malak, a tech executive and serial entrepreneur. I'm Reima. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and an educator. On our show, we're going to bring you real talk, real solutions, and plenty of laughs to the AI conversation. Yalla, let's go.
Matt, I mean, your article, the timeliness of it, I can't emphasize to you how back and forth these conversations with Rima and I were because of what we were experiencing and thinking about from our own lens. And it was really like a magical kind of timing seeing your piece. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to outline was everyone's talking about how AI is going to displace people, especially white collar entry level workers. But I think what I was trying to understand and articulate was how that might work in practice. Um, and so really, I talk about this process of how language models learn from us, and especially when it's an enterprise level model, that the work we do inside of that model is captured. As you
Mhm.
were talking, like I was thinking of a time when I was using, my personal account. It was as I do. I'm a power user in multiple accounts, right?
Mhm.
And it said something to me about myself, and I was like, and this is early on. I was like, whoa, like
Like it
that I
revealed
read
an insight about you that,
about, yes, and I was like, what? I was like, this is weird, and it's like, and I asked it, I'm like, how'd you know that? And it almost in a bashful way was like, oh, we had a conversation about this a while back. Is that okay? Do you not want me to recall things? I'm like, no, it was actually helpful. Go ahead and recall stuff. I was just a little bit freaked out. Um, but again, the level of granularity to which it is able to learn from our decisions, from our words, from our analysis, and then remember it, right? And then input it into this. I call it like the firm level brain, right? A lot of times when I will talk to, you know, everyone knows somebody at work who kind of doesn't want to teach you something because they're afraid if they teach you, then they'll be less valuable, right? kind of this knowledge hoarding that can happen in organizations is super common. And it makes
Mhm.
sense, right? Because that's your value. That's why they need you. And that's why essentially, down the road, they will pay you, right? Because it's hard to replace somebody who does things that are essential that nobody else can do, right? Well, as we integrate AI tools into our workflows, more and more and more, right? And especially when that workflow is in the organization and an AI that is owned by the organization on a contractual level, it's learning from us, learning all of our processes, even down to what was the language or the email to what person and what client that saved that relationship or made that sale? How was the approach? What was, these language models even get our language, right? The things that are so almost in the past so uniquely human and almost tacit,
Mhm.
right? It's able to kind of learn from those things and replicate those things over time.
Yeah, it really raises all of these kind of questions, and the thing that one of the things that caught my attention immediately was the headline of your article, which you said, if I'm remembering, that people are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs, but there's a bigger danger that they're overlooking, or they're missing the bigger danger, and these are the things that probably aren't getting enough attention
Mhm.
as we're all going on and using the enterprise tools, or the tools. I mean, even the tools, we know that they're being trained and retrained on us,
Yeah.
but that's kind of spread out, right? Like now,
Well,
if you
it's
take
interesting. I didn't interrupt you, but I didn't have time to talk about the idea that even if we use, so one of the outcomes of this article was, to the extent possible, create a portable version of your knowledge set and processes and really IP, I would call it just your
Mhm.
intellectual property, in a personal portable tool that you can take to whatever job, and then do the things you have to do in the enterprise level. And I got two things which were totally valid comments from people who've been reaching out to me. One is, well, doesn't the language model learn from you anyways?
Mhm.
So doesn't it somehow, because Anthropic and OpenAI are the main enterprise kind of language models people use. So doesn't it somehow leak from you back to
Mhm.
the enterprise at some point because
Mhm.
you're training those models, right? And I'm like, fair point.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to I actually had it in the paper at one point, in the essay at one point, but the editors were like, we don't have time for that, etc. The other thing was, like, you have, and some people were kind of fired up. They're like, you have a contractual obligation. You're telling people to go against their company. You're telling people to break, policy, etc. And I was like, well, I'm not. I never want to. And I actually have a line in there that says, you. I'm not telling you to, you know,
Violate
get
company
fired. Yeah,
policy.
right.
Mhm.
But what I'm telling you is to be aware that this is
Mhm.
happening, because from an ethical standpoint, I would also argue that this is all being done kind of in the shadows,
Oh yeah,
and
that's right.
and people aren't like, hey, by the way, everything you do in there, we're learning from it and we're going to use it and eventually replace it. No one's saying that. And so I'm just saying, hey, let's talk about this, and in the meantime try and find ways to, again, make your what you is uniquely your intellectual property, to be able to keep that.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
mentioned in there, and so, people ask me like, well, what do you do then, right? I mentioned in the article, I had a conversation with one executive in an oil company. What he does is what he needs to do, he does in the enterprise software, but he will actually create fake data sets, because obviously there's privacy, and you
Mhm.
don't. He'll create fake data sets, that are anonymized, et cetera, and put them in his own and do analysis to come up with, code and things that he's going to use for actual decision making in his own, right? So I think you just need to think carefully, and you don't want to break any rules, but you also want to
We're
push the
not
companies.
advocating for rule
No,
breaking.
no, 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 no. But what I am trying to do is keep everyone honest and say,
Right.
hey, some of my ideas should be mine, right? And
Mhm.
if you want them to be yours, then pay me for it, right? And tell me that you're stealing them, right? Or take them. Stealing is the wrong word. Tell me that you're taking them, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Matt, you come from a banking and pharmaceutical industries before becoming a scholar.
Yeah.
Does that ex or how much of that experience of being on the floor as a knowledge worker shape how you personally feel about these questions of labor and AI?
Oh, it's interesting. Honestly, AI is just so new. I don't know that I could have dreamed back when I worked, kind of in those industries, that we would be here, right? I think really what informs me more is how I use AI in my consulting right now, right? And when I work with companies and just see the power of it, see how much it can do. I mean, what took a staff of a few people, few weeks, I can literally do in an hour,
Hmm.
right? I mean, alone with no staff. And so if I'm seeing that in my work, I mean, there's no, and the fact that it's almost in a sense like the scalability of these things is, it just seems to have no end. What took somebody to do by hand, one person, right? You can have one bot. Of course, you have to train it. You have to put guardrails around it. You have to, maintain it. And people always say, well, you're still gonna have a person to do, to monitor the AI. I'm like, yeah, you have one person to monitor what used to be 1,000 people's jobs, right? Um, to me, it has just become almost a reality that I just do not think we're ready for, right? And so to me, I'm almost just like, well, how can we start conversations, and get people thinking, right? Get people thinking about how this future should be shaped. Because while I believe in markets, I believe in them being efficient. I believe that they do a lot better than governments at deciding prices, et cetera.
Hmm.
I do think that markets don't internalize externalities, right? You don't have clean water from a market. A market's never going to care about clean water, right?
Hmm.
And so there are times in which the collective has to say, hey, we don't want this to happen, right? We need to have a conversation about it because the profit motive is not going to give that to you. Consumers actually, I think I've been really fascinated. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm really fascinated how consumers are actually shaping. I think because this is such an important time and issue, that consumers are actually cued in, and the migration from OpenAI to Anthropic over
Yeah.
the weekend has been fascinating based upon things that are existential, right? Again, I think people are so cued in that we are seeing maybe even consumers make markets a little bit more honest. And so maybe maybe we don't need some sort of collective regulation or action. But again, I'm just saying that it's just something that I'm like, man, this is bigger than most people think. It's not business as usual. I'm really surprised about some of the comments online, on LinkedIn posts that talk about AI being so transformative. It's not a big deal. Technology's always changed things. Da, da, da. I'm like, guys,
They don't really
it's
grasp,
it's
they don't
unfortunate. Yeah.
grasp the real power. And I also read that most of the people who are taking these positions are not using a paid version of AI. They're
Mm,
actually using the free version. And I don't remember the stats, but they have been shared about the users on whether it's OpenAI, Claude, Copilot, that are paying for the service versus using the free version, which
mm.
is several iterations behind and obviously has more hallucinations, has less power output capacities. But I'm like you. I'm confused when people are talking about I'm not going to use it and I'm
Yeah.
just going to opt out. And I don't feel, even as difficult as it was to see people opting out of the smartphone kind of revolution,
Mhm.
this is much bigger. As
Yeah.
difficult as it was to opt out of that, this feels almost impossible to opt out
Mhm.
of and say, I'm not going to engage.
Mhm.
But the consumer piece you mentioned is really interesting to me because I think that consumers have much more power than they ever even realize. And they don't necessarily come together to coalesce that power towards a particular brand company unless there's real kind of spark. And I think the open
Implications. Yeah.
AI, yeah, I think the open AI was a catalyst. It got people talking and deciding that I don't want that to be the case with the Pentagon and, some of the conversations that were happening around government and its use of the tools.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. I look back at some of my cynicism around companies being regulated, and some of that cynicism is driven by how tech has just kind of been able to, I would say maybe people still argue that adolescents aren't being impacted by socials and things like that, but I think the data is just strong enough to say
Yeah.
it's not good, right? It's not good for people to be on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat by the time they're 10. Okay. But nothing was ever done. And the profit motive was so high that and they had data, right? Meta had
They
data
knew, they
around,
had research.
but the profit motive is so high and they're able to kind of hide those implications long enough that it's collectively almost impossible for people to opt out. But I think the difference here is people are like, this is an existential situation, right? AI, I mean, even back to like the stories of the Terminator, like we've heard this since we were kids. Like, and back then we were like, huh? Now it's like, whoa, so the government is going to have drones, right? That are autonomous. Like, and so people are cued in. And when you have a cavalier CEO who's like, people are adults. We'll go ahead and put, illicit stuff on ChatGPT. We'll take that deal with the Pentagon. That clearly kind of, and some of his boardroom behavior. I think clearly people are like, you know what? We do not need someone in there who cares about money more than our existence, right? And so I think in a way that I've often thought like, companies do what they do. I'm going to buy the product that's the best product. I've never been like kind of, how millennials kind of vote with their feet. I've always been like, whatever's cheapest, But on this one, I think leadership matters. And I think the way that they signal and the way that they put guardrails on their own product is going to have severe consumer implications. And obviously we saw that over the weekend with that flip-flop from Anthropic.
Mm-hmm. Matt, there is actually something that is almost existential in a lot of your arguments. Work has historically been one of the primary ways that humans build identity and a sense of irreplaceability. So if enterprise AI quietly erodes that, what do we lose beyond just economic leverage?
Mm. So this is the next piece I'm kind of working on right now. And so it's born out of, so I was at a wedding a couple of weeks ago and people were giving toasts. And I looked over at a good friend of mine and we both just winked and were like, that was ChatGPT, like, and the next one, ChatGPT. And there is this, so I had a friend on LinkedIn who posted, and one other anecdote, and then I'll get to my point.
Mm-hmm.
I found this artist who was playing this soul music of soul versions of bands that I loved. So there was like, I don't know if you guys are old enough to know the movie Singles back in the 90s, but Alice in Chains had this song called Wood that me and my buddies loved. It was great. So grunge music, but he did it like Barry White or something, like a soul version. And I was like, this is so cool.
That's cool.
The lyrics came alive in a different way. And I love soul music too. Well, and I'm showing my friends, I show my son, I was like, this is awesome. A week later, I come to find out it was AI. It was fake.
Generated, yes.
It was fake.
Yes.
And for me, I was like, and he's open about it. He's not, this artist it's actually in the title. It was like art was in the title. So he's saying, this is AI, just so you know. But I didn't know it for this couple of weeks and I'm totally digging it. And all of a sudden I felt this sense of betrayal, right? Mm-hmm. Like this sense of like, what is art beyond me connecting with another human, right? What it means to be human is almost being threatened. And those wedding speeches, by the way, may not have actually been written by ChatGPT, but I'm assuming they are now. And so part of me is like, we're going to get into a reality where we're not going to know. We're going to kind of assume every idea at every business meeting, every painting. Like, what does this do to like the Van Goghs of the world? Like they all of a sudden it changes my calculus of value. And so to get back to your point, Rima, about what is it damage beyond just economics, I think it is going to make us all think about what is the heart of our existence. I believe is one of those is connecting with other people, right? And I think it's going to harm that at first. But what I'm going to suggest in an article that I'm writing is I believe there's going to be a whole market driven by human or AI free zones. And I think people should even create these when it comes to music, when it comes to art, when it comes to even in business. I would argue that there are going to be AI-free zones for ideas, AI-free zones for learning, for education, for whatever. And we need to think about, when the calculator came out, people and even governments, Singapore, you can't use a calculator, K through 12, right? So people decided when should we use the calculator and when should we not? Because if we let them use it all, no one's ever going to know how to do math, right? There is some under the hood learning that needs to happen. And so anyways, my thought is, without a conversation about when and what AI free zones should look like in both business and education and development, we will become dumber, less connected. This is, if social media was a counterfeit for real social connections, this is like exponentially more impactful to our ability to connect with other humans. And so anyways, that's another thing. And it gets to your question. I appreciate you asking that question because I think it's so important. We need to evaluate, like, what do I value? What do I care about? And if it is knowing another human has a thought or a feeling authentically and me identifying and connecting with that, this is at danger.
That's interesting. While you were talking about these AI-free zones, I started visualizing, if you go to a show or a concert or they give you the pouches and you put the phone in the pouch because the artist could be working out new material or they have an agreement with Netflix and that is going to be the first release, not your social media clip, of 30 seconds of the bit. But I'm trying to imagine these AI-free zones, and I've started to see, at least in one or two of my LinkedIn contacts, when they post something, they have a little note at the bottom saying, I'm challenging myself for the next 30 days to create pure content that is not AI assisted, not generated, not even AI assisted. And so I wonder if there's going to be almost like we have these verification badges, that's your real identity. Is there going to be something that this is created in cohort or this is created independently? That's interesting.
My guess, my estimate is that this will be similar to like organic food, right? It's a verified consumer badge, right? That lets people know, okay, this is not. And of course, there's even been times where, those organizations have been challenged. Well, is it really organic or is it really free range?
And how are you defining organic, right?
Exactly. And so I think all that process will have to play out. But I know personally, if people, and sometimes people don't really recognize it, right? Sometimes people don't think that deeply about the implications of never hearing an authentic wedding speech anymore, right? But again, this will start, and people text only anyway, right? Kids are only, texting, not even talking. They're in groups texting each other in person. I mean, imagine, has anyone gonna ever really believe that that's not AI? Like, so I think that there might be this resurgence towards in person. And this ability to say, I am a human, you are a human. Let's actually get to know each other and not have it be something that's counterfeit. I like that word counterfeit, and I'm going to try and evangelize that, right? That the things that are human are going to be counterfeited by AI. And if we don't pay attention to that, if we don't create spaces where there is AI free, then we're not going to be filled with the the same connection that we were before AI came. So that this is not has nothing to do with the current article, though. So I hope I didn't derail us.
No. But
I'm
this,
about to
these
jump
are,
back to the current article. Do we have time?
Yeah, sure.
yeah. Go
More
ahead, Rima,
questions?
please.
Yeah.
So your recent work suggests that AI may actually widen the gap between star performers and everybody else, not close it. So I think that's a provocative inversion of the whole AI democratizes talent narrative.
Yes.
What does that mean for how we think about merit and fairness at work?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's some different data coming out as we know it, and that piece really was more my predictions rather than because the data is kind of coming out right now, right?
Yeah.
But so let me just, the premise is built upon the fact that I believe AI is a force multiplier. I believe that it's kind of good data in, good data out, or bad data in, bad data out. And so rather than this idea that people who are low skilled, kind of low, I'll call it human capital, that have ideas that are valuable in a market, will be able to kind of be upskilled. I believe that what's going to happen more are the people who have expertise, the expertise to know which questions, which prompts, but also how to find the mistakes, right? Which I think is even more important. These experts who are able to work with AI and basically produce things that they actually don't need a staff to do anymore, right? And so I feel like it's going to be a force multiplier to widen the gap between those stars that in the past, just couldn't do nearly as much. But it's basically like replicating what they already do, rather than it. So I believe it's kind of a widening gap. Now, the question you asked was surrounding what does this do for kind of equity and pay and things like that. I believe that it's not going to be good for those things, right? One other thing I note in there is that, and this gets more to kind of the psychology around AI in the workplace. We call it the AI Matthew effect. There was this sociologist Merton who created this idea, the Matthew effect, and what he said is those who are of high status not only get more credit for similar work of people who are low status, then they also get more resources. And it's like this virtuous cycle. And the Matthew effect was the rich get richer, right? That's where he took that from. And what we call, me and a co-author of mine would call it the AI Matthew effect. And the reason why we say this is because, if somebody brings a really smart idea into a workplace, and if they are like a star employee, someone who already has a reputation for creating great ideas, and they used AI doing it, people are going to be like, oh, wow, the star is really firing. That's a great. If somebody who is low status, doesn't have good ideas, comes up with an idea without AI that's really great, and they bring it into their team, they're going to be like, that was AI, wasn't it? Right. So there's almost this kind of.
That's so interesting.
There's almost this kind of like attribution problem that not only in terms of is their expertise better, and so therefore it's a force multiplier, but it's almost like this discounting that people who are lower status are going to have, because everyone's just going to like discount it and get attribute it to AI, where the opposite will be true with those who are already kind of experts. And so anyway, so I
you remember the film Working Girl from the 80s?
No, tell me about it.
Oh my goodness. It basically was the same story. This very high-powered executive hires the secretary who has brilliant ideas.
I do remember this.
She gets sick, breaks her leg or something, and then the secretary starts impersonating her putting her ideas out there, and then she gets discredited when the high-powered exec finds out and actually claims her ideas for this huge merger. And they were going to believe the high-powered exec rather than this. I think the girl was from Jersey, and she was,
from Jersey.
That's
from
awesome.
Jersey, the big hair, all that, right? So,
yeah.
So, but
is that where that stereotype came from?
Yes.
Back in the 80s. Okay.
Yes. Excuse me. I live in Jersey. Well, we both live in Jersey.
Well, I was going to say, I also live in New Jersey.
You're allowed to talk.
We're allowed. But
that's so interesting.
Your point. Yes. My goodness.
So Matt, one of the things I get asked frequently. I think about frequently. I know Rima gets asked this because of our work with the universities and, being so close to students is what should my kids study? What is
Mhm.
the future? Like, what will protect them because of the obvious uncertainty and kind of replacement, displacement, skilling, upskilling, things that
Yeah.
are constantly in the news. What's your take on that? What would you say to an anxious parent?
Mm. Yeah. So I have kids. I think about it all the time.
Hmm.
And I don't have like a really kind of evidence-based answer because there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen, who will be displaced.
Hmm.
But what I will say is this: I am ensuring, to the best of my ability, that they are actually developing critical thinking skills. And because I think that if we don't get serious in K through 12 about guardrails for AI, I think there's going to be a generation of people who have not really done kind of the mental work, right, to be able to have the tools necessary um, to solve real problems and you know create value, right, in the job market. And so I think we need to take ownership. If we don't know if there's guardrails on AI at their school, um, and they're able to just AI their way through to get a diploma, that would be a problem, right? And so I would argue that it's interesting because when it comes to learning, and then I'll get to more practically speaking what I think my kids should do. But when it comes to learning, I think AI has like this really disparate effect. I think it can make people just dumber because they don't do any work ever and they don't
Hmm.
ever think and don't ever learn. But I think it could actually be a learning accelerator
Yeah.
with the right guardrails. So for instance, my son's in a calculus class right now. He does dual credit, so he's doing like a junior college
Hmm.
calculus class. And so I actually built a project or a GPT or a whatever for him, and I trained this project to say, look, wall off from the internet. Don't give my son any. I just wrote in there that my son's taking this. I want you to be his tutor. I don't want you to give him the answers. I want you to teach him how to do it in plain English. If he gives you questions, if he gives you a problem, walk him through it. If he gives you his answers, find out and diagnose where he's going wrong and help teach him what he's missing. We know the best way to learn, the most effective way to learn is one-on-one tutoring, right? I
Yes.
mean, the evidence it speaks clearly
Yes.
to that. And our education has always suffered and been subpar because we're teaching 30 people all at different levels. And some people are sitting around, some people have no idea what's going on, and it's chaos, right?
Hmm.
AI gives us the opportunity to actually have a tutor. So he's in here and he's having a conversation and it's telling him right back and giving him in plain English, probably better than most teachers can do, right? Because of that's something AI is really good at, right? And so I think if we can put guardrails around it and say, hey, let's use AI to accelerate learning. I think there's this Atlas school in Austin that they actually go to school like 3 hours a day, but they build these bots. And they have basically one-on-one tutors, and then they have one teacher going around managing all of them,
Right.
right? But it's really not that hard to create those. So, anyways, so I think use AI to accelerate learning because collectively most people won't, and I think that will give you an advantage once you hit the job market, right? So that's what I do for my kids. Number one. Number two, I think I don't know which doing stuff with your hands
Yeah.
probably good, right? So if you want to go into medicine, be a surgeon, not a general doc, because I do think that people are like, oh, it's not going to hit doctors. It will,
Oh,
right?
it,
I
it,
mean,
it already has.
yes,
Look at the
yes. I mean,
radiology field, look at pathology.
I
Hmm.
mean, this is another, I tell too many stories, but
Mm.
I severely hurt my back a few days ago. And my wife's been making fun of me. They're like, you're going to go to the doctor? I'm like, well, I actually been talking to AI about it this whole time. And even down to like, I just was completely immobilized with a back spasm, blah, blah, blah. It talked me through it. First of all, it asked me a bunch of questions that a doctor would ask. It said, do you have any pain below your knee? Is there any numbness? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's like, okay, you don't need to go to the doctor. This is mechanical. It will take this long. And it gave me each day, it gave me, okay, you ice the first day, you do warm the next day. And I was even like really scared. I'm like, this is it hurting? They're like, it's okay. It's supposed to hurt day 3. And everything it said has been great advice, even to when to start stretching. Don't stretch now, stretch later. But like, if I went to a doctor, I'd have a half hour with them and then I forget everything he said or she said and go home and make all the mistakes I shouldn't have and re-injure my back. But instead I have this companion and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, it's not a person. Because I said I was talking to AI and my wife is making fun of me. She's like, you're so weird. You're talking. But honestly, again,
Rima and I talk to it all the time too.
Same.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing in my car. All of it. Like I'm just riffing with it in the car. Like it's
yeah. So when it comes to things that are conversational, those are going to be less in demand. If you're using your hands, I think we're probably farther away from actual robots doing things.
Doing open heart surgeries, and although there
Exactly.
is some of this robotic surgeries happening, from a
Mhm.
distance, but I
But I
think
think it's
there's the
going to be things
element.
that are very rudimentary. Like
Correct.
they're same thing over and over.
I think where there is the possibility of chaos or high uncertainty in an outcome, that is definitely still more human managed than, the more traditional kind of rinse and repeat sort of medical cases.
Yeah.
It's,
So doing things with your hands, yes. But I also would just argue if you invest in deep expertise, right? So people are like, higher ed's over. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think it's going to change for sure. But if you invest in your brain and get real expertise, I think you will find expertise that has a market, right? That has if you can become an expert in something, I still think you'll be able to have a job in an AI world, right? And so that's my just very loose. I don't have any actual jobs. I just say probably using your hands is going to last longer. And if you can just go deep and get expertise, I think AI is always going to need experts, right, to go along with it. Maybe not always. I don't know, but I hope we usually always have experts alongside AI, making sure that it's being managed by humans.
Matt, I know you've been so generous with your time and your insight. One of the things you mentioned in the article that I'd love to touch on, if you would allow us, is you talked about the possibility of negotiating with a potential employer about your IP. So that there is, you said it's happening kind of covertly, it's not openly being discussed, and you really want the conversation to take place. So how do you imagine somebody who is maybe a new grad in the recruiting season having this conversation, or somebody who is transitioning from a job to another, or somebody who's in a workplace? I mean, it's kind of like the post-nup, pre-nup discussion. Can you get it once you're already married? Can you have this conversation once you're already employed?
Probably not. And I don't know how well those conversations will currently go. Because I think the assumption is that we put the privacy policy and disclosures and it's all in there. And so when I mention in the article that people should start talking about IP ownership and understand what's actually happening, it was more of a conversation starter. I think if someone's graduating right now, have the conversation, but just understand that you don't have as much leverage, right, as maybe someone who's consultant or with a resume that, they have a lot more bargaining power on the market, could probably have those conversations about, I want to keep my IP. But again, have the conversation and ask them, what are you tracking? Like we have a right to know. Probably we have a reasonable right to privacy, right? And so I'd like to know in plain English everything all the data that you are keeping about me. And those conversations, I think, are going to be really important going forward. And those can happen, I think, when you go to an organization or anytime there is an adoption of any sort of AI tool. That's an impetus for hey, just want to have a conversation about what's going on with IP and how that's going to be used, how that's going to be leveraged in the future. Because, I think there are probably a lot of organizations that understand that when things like privacy and kind of these social contracts of, hey, this is a job, but like it's also a workplace where we care about humans. I think there are a lot of companies that once those things are surfaced, they're going to think harder about, well, yeah, we want to make sure that our workforce is happy and healthy, right? And we also generally want to do the right thing by our people. And so what is our IP policy? How are we going to manage that? And then, so again, it's more of a conversation starter than it is saying like, you're going to have leverage going in, because I'm not sure that they will early on, especially.
Yeah, those are great insights. You've been so generous with your time and your insights and really the way that you're thinking about the questions of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. This is really neat. Nice to meet you both.
So we have, go ahead, Rima.
Yeah, so Matt, we have 3 questions that we always ask every guest. So I'm going to
Okay.
kick it off. What is your favorite snack?
My favorite snack is Diet Mountain Dew. That's such a white trash answer, but it is true. I don't know why. I don't know why, man. I think it's the one thing I do that's like I'm a little bit ashamed of, is like I get a big gulp every morning. And it's fine. I'm saying it publicly on a podcast. But yeah, it fuels me. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Old School, but it's a Will Ferrell movie, and he doesn't want to drink at this party, but he ends up getting like kind of conned into it, and after he takes a drink, he says, it tastes so good when it hits your lips, and I honestly feel like that almost every morning when I take my first swig of Diet Mountain Dew. I'm an evangelist at this point, I think.
Wow,
So
okay.
I have never even considered that was a possibility of, like, I rarely ever hear about Mountain Dew and much less Diet Mountain Dew. That's funny.
Yeah. It's got a bad rap. In the past,
I
it had some chemicals. People don't like it. And when I say, and that's why I even say it outwardly, because I'm like, I like it. And you can shove it if you don't. If you want to judge me for it,
You
that's
can
fine.
Judge me
Yeah.
for my choices. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. I love the way
Yeah.
you owned it. Thank you.
Yeah.
We need
I think
more
I
of
have to
that.
at this point,
I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna get one tonight with dinner.
It's citrusy.
I'll tell. Yeah, I was about to say it's citrus. Like Mountain Dew is citrusy, so it must
Yeah.
be that refreshing zest that
Yes.
hits like this. There you go. There you go.
You know what? I thank you. Thank you for not one for not judging me, and 2 for even getting a little bit into it with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
We're
Let's
here
go.
for it.
We're
We're
here
here
for
for it, Matt. So transitioning to the next question.
Okay.
Rima and I have a thing with our bags. We love our bags, and we would like to know what's in your bag. So give us your fetish.
Let me look here. Jeez. No, man. I'll tell you what's always in my bag
Yeah.
are these.
AirPods.
I use these
Mints?
like
Are they
probably
mints or
40,
AirPods?
40 hours a week. AirPods. Yeah. I use these like 40 hours a week. I love music, and I talk on the phone a lot for work, and I don't know what I did before I had the AirPods, honestly. Like, they're so integral to my life that it's a big deal. So that's what I'll say that.
That's what's in your bag.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Final question, Rima.
What is something, Matt, that is making your life better? Other than Mountain Dew.
And AirPods.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I would have the boring answer, but the true answer are my kids. Okay. But so I'll say that, but then I'm going to give a more fun answer, which is also true. And that is a hot tub, which I had installed at my house over the summer.
Nice.
And honestly, at night, in Texas, it's like 70 degrees at night right now, by the way, not to brag. Okay.
I was going to say, it feels like you're rubbing that in.
Yeah.
We have the winter that just won't stop. The winter that just keeps going and going in New Jersey.
Yes.
I'm sweating walking around. It's 80 degrees, 70. So at night, I'm in the hot tub and I kind of lean back and I look at the stars for like 10 minutes. That's what's making my life joyful. That's my moment of peace every day.
That's inspiring. I
Okay.
looking outside. My
You
ground
have
is still
space. You
covered
have
in
space.
snow,
You have some
but
space for a hot tub in the back, Medic. We could.
I
You can
definitely
get
have
Yes.
space. But
Oh,
do I
you do?
want to
Yeah.
traipse out there in the with the snow-covered
some.
ground? That's the question. I have the space for it. I don't know that I have the fortitude to get myself to the hot tub in this
Oh
current
my goodness.
climate. Matt, this has been so enriching.
Me
Really,
too.
tremendous gratitude to you. And where can our guests find out more about you? Like, what's the platform that you spend the most time on, your handle?
Yeah. I just LinkedIn. You
Mhm.
can search me. I'm horrible about this stuff. I have multiple mentors who continuously scold me for having no presence at all
Mhm.
on the web. But I do have a website, but I haven't updated in like 3 years.
Okay.
But I'm on LinkedIn. I find
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn actually quite useful.
Mhm.
And I connect with people on there. I answer messages on there.
Okay.
And so that'd be my place. You can find me. I don't know what you have to do to search me, but you'll
You
you'll
just
eventually find
search your
me.
name. Yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
search your name.
Matthew
What's your
Call.
name?
Yeah,
And we'll
yeah,
link that in the show notes.
Mhm.
Thank you
yeah. Happy
again
to connect. Thank
for
you
being here
guys.
with